scheduled to splash down in just about 2.5 hours. Looking forward to welcoming them home after 6 months aboard the International Space Station.
And the team recently donned those suits. In about 15 minutes here, they're going to perform suit leak checks. They will close their visors and make sure that there are no leaks in the suits. In case of a depressurization event, the suits do inflate and provide some level of protection and a habitable environment for the astronauts. Again, these suits are custom made for each of the astronauts and designed in-house here at SpaceX. They are a one-piece suit. Everything is integrated. The helmets, the gloves, the boots are all part of that one-piece suit, and the astronauts really just climb in and start zipping things up. The helmet itself is made of 3D printed nylon, and that white material on the exterior is bleached Teflon, and there are also some gray pads as well, and that is Nomex, which is related to nylon, but it has a couple of different properties, some chemical resistance as well as temperature resistance.
And while the Crew Dragon vehicle is just 10 kilometers lower in orbit than the International Space Station, it is 176 kilometers away. So it has really put some distance between those vehicles through the 4 departure burns we saw earlier. And then that final major deorbit burn coming up here in about an hour and a half, we will be looking for that. It's really a braking maneuver. The vehicle will be slewed or oriented so that the thrusters are pointing into the direction that the vehicle is traveling. We'll fire those thrusters for about 16.5 minutes, and that will slow Dragon enough to help it drop out of orbit and re-enter Earth's atmosphere.
At re-entry, those seats do recline, and they will recline back and up about 26 degrees in preparation for re-entry of the capsule.
In this view right now, you can see this is, I believe, the 40-degree incline or actuation. They are facing really that upper hatch, the hatch that they use to enter and exit the International Space Station. And then at their feet and to the right of that window, you can see the side hatch. That's what they use to ingress or enter Crew Dragon almost 6 months ago, November 15th, when they launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And that hatch is not used from the time they launch until the time they return. That'll be the same hatch that they egress or exit later tonight. A good view of Mike Hopkins and Victor Glover, commander and pilot of this mission. And you can see they have their visors up on their helmets, so they will lower those once it's time for the leak check to make sure there's a good seal within the suit, and the teams will begin flowing nitrox into the suit and pressurizing them. And once there's confirmed a good leak check, like we said, coming up in just a little over 10 minutes from now, they'll be able to lift those visors again until it's time for re-entry.
And Mike Hopkins, the commander, is, getting a bunch of different views and information from those touchscreen displays. They do provide a ton of information, especially on re-entry, things like entry angle, capsule perigee, also the time until the deorbit burn once it begins, how long it will be until it ends. They can also see exactly which Draco thrusters are firing at any given time. And again, there are 16 of those Draco thrusters on the Dragon capsule.
And it looks like we have just a loss of signal, some satellite handovers potentially with Crew Dragon, and we may regain those visuals shortly, but a great look inside at our crew members as they continued their journey home. And on the Earth side of things, we've got everything moving along smoothly as well. The WB-57 aircraft departed from Ellington Field recently, and we have that aircraft equipped with thermal imaging cameras, so we look forward to the potential of seeing some infrared imagery of Crew Dragon as it begins re-entering Earth's atmosphere and through splashdown, as well as the crew members, or the team members, I should say, necessary for recovery are all aboard the Go Navigator recovery vehicle or vessel that will be lifting the Crew Dragon vehicle out of the water tonight.
Yeah, it is so cool to see the astronauts in their spacesuits donned up. It's been a while since we've seen them inside. We've mainly been hearing the audio chatter back and forth between them and the core, but we're at a period now where the suits are up and we've turned back on our interior cameras, and they've sort of invited us back on board with them as they continue their journey back to splashdown later on this evening.
We did get a fun look inside the capsule earlier while they were having their dinner. And the crew members were out of their suits, but they left their suits in their seats. So that was a little bit of a funny sight for a moment there. And you can see them maneuvering the displays and taking a look at exactly where they are on the map.
If you look, there's some luggage and cargo stowed right behind them. This view is sort of from the top of the Dragon capsule looking down. So where the cargo is stored, that's sort of the base of the Dragon capsule. And if you were to go all the way through the Dragon capsule, on the other side would be the trunk, which in a few hours here, we're actually going to be jettisoning to make to expose the heat shield and preparing for re-entry.
It also makes the vehicle about 6,000 pounds lighter, I believe. So that trunk will burn up upon reentry into the Earth's atmosphere, but for now remains attached. Half of that trunk being a radiator to dispel heat from the vehicle, and the other half being solar arrays to help gather power for the vehicle. And yet again, another one of those satellite handovers, which we track, and the teams on the ground are able to track for when they will have video or audio communication with the crew members. But this view on the right-hand side of your screen is Mission Control Hawthorne here at SpaceX in California. All of the team members are monitoring the systems aboard Crew Dragon, but Crew Dragon is an autonomous vehicle, and so hopefully they remain in a monitoring mode tonight, as well as that's our hope for the astronauts too, that they can hopefully enjoy that ride home and not have to take too much action, but rather just watch the spacecraft operate as it is programmed.
And speaking of autonomy, we do have a question. We have a couple minutes here before we begin those suit leak checks. Is the returning process all controlled and handled on Earth, not on Crew-1 side? And as Leah mentioned, it's really the Dragon vehicle. There are some commands that, the ground can send up to Dragon, but the Dragon vehicle itself is really ushering all of its commands to make sure that it is landing where it needs to land. You do hear often information and communication being relayed back and forth between the crew operations resource engineer here in Mission Control Hawthorne and the astronauts to make sure that they are in sync. But at that point, really the spacecraft is flying itself.
We've got another question, and these are coming in from Twitter. If you're online, you can use the hashtag #LaunchAmerica. Yeah. We'll do our best to answer your question, but this one is Baby Yoda returning with the crew. Yes, Baby Yoda is returning with the crew. That is their zero-G indicator. If you happen to be wondering just who Baby Yoda is, Baby Yoda launched with the crew members last fall on November 15th. And a zero-G indicator serves the purpose of kind of showing the crew, giving them a visual reference of when they reach microgravity. So instead of being in a seat or attached to something, he would begin floating. And that's exactly what we saw, and he became a fan favorite.
Yeah, it sort of broke the internet for a little bit. I think at that time, Baby Yoda, or the child, was a very, very popular character. We've had a couple of other zero-G indicators on Demo 2. Bob and Doug brought up a dinosaur. And most recently on Crew 2, we saw Gwyn-Gwyn.
Gwyn-Gwyn, the penguin.
We saw a very short glimpse of Gwyn-Gwyn. Usually it's some sort of sentimental value to one or all of the astronaut members. And so I think Gwyn-Gwyn was selected by some of the sons of the astronauts. So very, very cool to see that, there is some connection between, even though they're in space, you still have that sentimental connection to the folks back on Earth.
And that dinosaur, that was the same thing that was chosen by Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley's sons, that sequin dinosaur named Tremor. So I know they had to be very excited to see once their dads got on orbit, and Tremor was with them as well.
Yeah, we don't see Baby Yoda quite flying around, even though they are in zero G right now. So maybe he's stowed away. Maybe he's buckled into one of the seats. But he is certainly a stowaway and a fifth crew member, if you will, on the Crew-1 returning. We have another question here. This is an excellent question for this time. What material is used on the outer surface of the capsule to resist extreme levels of heat? That is an excellent question, especially as we are approaching the deorbit burn and reentry. So we use a material called PICA 3.0, and that stands for phenolic impregnated carbon ablator. And it is a material that was designed in joint teamwork from NASA and SpaceX, but it is not very dense. It's about the density of balsa wood, so very lightweight material, and it is sort of created in tiles and adhered to the bottom of the capsule of the Dragon spacecraft capsule, and that is really what will serve as the main sort of material to resist that extremely high temperature, as high as 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit upon reentry.
And speaking of that temperature, we have a question from Chris Anthony. Do the astronauts feel heat inside the capsule during reentry? And the hope is no. We will experience, or the external of the vehicle can get up to 3,500 degrees, but the interior of the vehicle shouldn't get much more than 85 degrees. And of course, that's a little warmer than it is being kept at the moment, but in comparison to the 3,500 outside, it's only a slight increase.
Just a slight increase. We should also mention that the suits, there's an umbilical on the right thigh that will feed nitrox, and it has the ability to effectively purge the suit with cool nitrox or air for the astronauts. So in the event that it does get warm in the cabin and the suits get warm, the suit itself will actually detect automatically and start to purge that air to make sure that the astronauts are nice and comfortable, even if they are deorbiting and the outside temperatures can reach 3,000 plus degrees Fahrenheit.
This question from Sherry, who makes the spacesuits that the astronauts wear? And those were all made here in-house at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. They are designed to work seamlessly with the Crew Dragon vehicle themselves, as we've talked about, that umbilical that plugs into the seat, providing communications and air to the astronauts. So yes, those were made here in-house. They are one-piece spacesuits. Even the boots and the gloves, they're all connected. And so the astronauts are able to ingress those, zip them up, and it's one and done, very easy.
Yeah, and they're all custom made for each of the astronauts. The helmet is made up of 3D printed nylon, and the exterior is made up of a combination of bleached Teflon and Nomex. And so the suits themselves serve a number of functions. They provide communications, they provide electronics, avionics, as well as protection against, in the event of a depressurization event.
Another thing that is custom fitted are the seats themselves.
Dragon SpaceX, you are go to begin procedure 4.011 suit leak check.
Copy. Go for suit leak check 4.011.
And that is right on time. Those suit leak checks being performed, the astronaut suits will be pressurized. They will not remain that way, but we want to make sure that they have a good seal in those suits in case they need to be pressurized later in the mission. But as I was mentioning, the suits are custom fitted, as well as are the inserts in the seats. They are formed to each astronaut so that there's maximum comfort as well as weight distribution whenever we splash down. So pretty cool.
We have another question here from Rich. How long does it take to acclimate to Earth's gravity? Is there physical therapy required? That is a great question. It really stems from generally their time in microgravity as well. When you're in space, you don't have that constant pull of gravity where, we take it here for granted, but our muscles and our bodies are sort of fighting against gravity to stand upright, and we're using our muscles all the time. In microgravity, you don't really have that. So the astronauts, first and foremost, spend a lot of their time, about 2 hours a day, exercising. There's a sort of variety of exercises and equipment that they can use.
Resilience, we are ready to pressurize.
You are go for suit pressurization.
Good work.
As we heard that call, suit pressurization now underway. That means those suits should be completely zipped and their helmet visors should be lowered. As we mentioned, they can raise those again ahead of the deorbit burn. But once the deorbit burn comes around, we'll want to make sure everything is sealed up nicely. But for now, just making sure that we have everyone properly suited just in case we needed to pressurize later on in the mission.
So as I was saying, the astronauts do try to make sure that there isn't any muscle loss due to atrophy up in space. So they exercise quite a bit, and when they return, there is definitely an adjustment period. I think it varies on the person, but as we splash down later, a medical staff will check in with them. But you also notice that we'll bring out stretchers, and this is standard procedure, and we want to make sure that the astronauts are as comfortable as they can be, when they're egressing the vehicle and moving over to the medical bay on the ship. But it certainly does depend. But they've been in microgravity for so long that sometimes the gravity on Earth can be quite harsh when you're just returning for the first time.
And they do have those medical checks upon splashdown, as Andy mentioned. And once they return to Houston, they will have flight doctors checking in with them as well. But thanks to those workouts that they do for about 2 hours a day on the space station, typically they do recover very quickly. They probably could walk tonight or tomorrow if they wanted to once they egress the vehicle. But once you are getting back and your body's readjusting to gravity and that equilibrium, it's safer and just to put them on the stretcher. And it's very similar if you've ever watched landing in a Soyuz capsule on the steppe of Kazakhstan. You'll see people being carried in these chairs from one location over to the medical tent for their checkup. So it's very similar, and it's pretty much standard procedure for us.
So continue to send us questions using the hashtag LaunchAmerica.
Deathmatch.
We are well underway
Warm
with
up.
the suit leak checks. From now until the next major event, it's about an hour at around 10:57 Pacific time. We'll have call separation, which is an umbilical that is attached from the trunk to Dragon that will route power and telemetry. After that, we'll jettison the trunk and start to prepare for the orbit burn. And once we begin this deorbit burn, we are committed to making sure that the astronauts, the weather, the latest reports still show that
And SpaceX from resilience, we feel full good suits.
Good news. SpaceX.
And the trend of seamless operations continues with 4 good suit leak checks, as Andy mentioned. Ball separation, trunk jettison, and then the deorbit burn. And once the deorbit burn occurs, that should come around 11:03 p.m. Pacific time and last about 16.5 minutes. And within the hour of that time period, we expect
So we have the weather. It continues to look good, although at this point,
We try something.
the winds
I see it.
are, just below 3
Fight!
miles an hour.
Okay,
The
let's
waves
get set up.
themselves are about 1 meter tall, which is great, like for not just the splashdown of the capsule, but the recovery team as well. They're not going to have to fight the seas in order to get to the astronauts, which is always a good thing.
we still go in our recovery zone, our primary splash.
Dragons.
And go for the deorbit.
All right, Hopper. First off, your display and tablet timelines are up to date. In addition, the recovery team reports all personnel aboard. They are in position and ready to go. The WB-57 is airborne. Near the location, we're getting some great imagery here. The Coast Guard have also cleared the landing area.
Okay, display timeline. The team is on site on the recovery team, and the WB-57 is airborne and almost on site as well.
Good read. In addition, the winds at your landing site are currently showing tight under the period of about 5.
Less than 1 foot, period of 1.5 seconds. And we like
Foolish.
Copy all. The period is
Dominating.
5 seconds, so a little bit faster than 5 seconds. In addition, we do have a bit of a system update for you. The LOS page turns out there was an issue. In particular, we had a delayed return link AOS. Interference issue at the East 271. It is possible to repeat this issue when we use the satellite pin 0537 to 0556. Prior to fall 75, just prior to trunk jettison. How copy?
One dead.
We'll see it again, 537 or 0556, or we potentially
Yeah, that's a good readback. We do suspect that this affects return link only, so expect calls in the blind from us. In addition, even if the issue does repeat, we are still go for deorbit entry and landing.
Okay, impact, return link only, so we would hear you, but you wouldn't hear us, and we would go for...
One down.
That is a good readback.
Has cleared the landing site. The WB-57 is airborne and almost towards that landing site as well. And then we also got an update on weather. So the winds and the waves are under a foot with a period of things continuing to load a nighttime splashdown at 11:56 p.m. Pacific time. The core also
Rain a kill.
And we're suspecting that one of the Tejas satellites could pop up again for call separation. So if that does happen, it seems like we are still good for deorbit burn. The Dragon team should be able to hear
10 kills remaining.
We won't be able to hear anything.
Absolutely. And Tejas, that's the tracking data and relay satellite system. That's the same satellite system used by the International Space Station for communication. So they're continuing to watch that issue. However, it's good to know that it may be expected and that we are down. So we mentioned that the wind speed is about 2 knots, and looking at the recovery criteria, the wind speed can be 10.5 knots. So we are well within that margin, and things continuing to look very optimal for
Put down
tonight. Some really interesting information. We've mentioned that this is the a record-setting splashdown. It will break the record from the final Skylab crew, who days 1 hour and 15 minutes following their mission. Tonight's splashdown at the end of 168 days in space is exactly
5 kills remaining.
As that former record. That's the previous longest
Dominating
mission in a space capsule. So we've got a lot of history happening once again tonight.
we have a bit of time before the next major event. That is Los
One
Angeles
kill remaining.
at 10:57 p.m. Pacific time. So we just finished and had a nominal suit leak check. And from now until then, the team is coasting until they sort of reach their optimal position in space to begin the sequences to shed some more weight in the form of the trunk, and then start the deorbit burn, which should last